They still call me the Penguin.
Okay, we have returned to We'll See About That with our special guest, Tim Mead. And Tim will be receiving a beautiful fruit gift basket courtesy of our friends at Melissa's Produce. Melissa's is a proud partner of We'll See About That. Be sure to use my VIP code RONSAY when checking out at melissas.com. Tim Mead is our guest today, and for those of you who did not know, Tim had 4 decades of Major League Baseball under his belt, primarily with the Los Angeles Angels. He was a president of the National Basketball Hall of Fame Museum in Cooperstown, New York.
You did it again, Basketball Hall of Fame. Just take that line over again.
Basketball. I did. That's why I'm 77 years old. Right there. That's probably the reason that happened. Okay. You want to go back to past Melissa's?
Yeah, just to take it from
Tim Mead.
Yeah, Tim Mead. Take it from there.
Okay, we're going to be talking with Tim Mead, who had a very distinguished career in Major League Baseball, 4 decades with the Los Angeles Angels, and he was also president of the National Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, New York, from 2019 to 2021. And Tim, it seems like you started from the bottom, the mail room or whatever. You were director of media relations, assistant vice president of media relations, assistant general manager, and finally vice president of communications for 22 years. Yeah, it seems like you did it all back then.
Well, Ron, greetings. It's a pleasure to join you and Mike on this show. And you know, when you reflect back on your career as you do your playing career, all that goes quick, but the start is as important as the finish, I think. And for me, starting as an intern with some of the people I learned from with the Angels organization. And I actually did an internship, sort of an internship with the Dodgers in 1980. I was working on the scoreboard crew with Barry Stockhammer at the time. So I had the great opportunity of working with both organizations. But I think that, you know, a gentleman that we both knew very well, Preston Gomez, gave me some good advice when I started, and it was look, listen, and observe. And when you come into an organization and you're starting fresh and you're starting on kind of the lower end of the totem pole, that was some of the best advice that I could have ever received. And I really kind of carried that with me throughout my career and passed it along to others. But, you know, the growth through the organizations really seemed to kind of happen quickly. And I was very blessed and fortunate to have some good teachers and mentors along the way.
Well, certainly I know Preston Gomez. He was one of our coaches when I broke in, and Barry Stockhammer was my superior when I started working for the Dodgers when Peter O'Malley brought me back in around 1996. So, yeah, I have fond memories of both, and you had some good teachers.
I really did. And when I look back on it, Ron, and I tell students this today, you know, when you talk to classes, some of the best education you're ever going to get in any occupation or vocation is the experience that you gain from people that have been there first. And I found, you know, I started with Buzzy Bavasi. Again, the Dodger connection, Dodger Angel connection is so strong. Red Patterson, amongst others. And I found that those gentlemen, and at the time, a few ladies that had had lengthy careers in the game, were very open to passing along mentoring and experiences and their wisdom. If we, as young people just entering the game, were open-minded to A, ask the questions, and B, listen. And by listen, I mean don't have a comment back all the time, but truly listen to what they were passing along. Because this is a game of experiences, spontaneity, and you know, I just think it was just great people and their experiences in the real world of the game, both in the business side, handling players, handling media, handling fans, handling each other, handling privacy, just all kinds of things came at you at once. And I could not have asked for me when I started in 80, full-time in 81, for a better group of people. That also went up the road to Dodger Stadium. Toby Zweikel and Steve Brenner were two people I held in high regard for how they handled public relations. I'd written Fred Clare a note when I was in high school about how you join, a major league front office, and I still have the letters that Fred sent me in response. And ironically, every step of the way in my career where I would get a promotion, Fred was one of the first ones that would write me a note, and I learned how to handle and interact with people based on just that little kindness or professionalism from Fred.
You are taking back to old home week with Toby Zweikel, Steve Brenner, Buzzy Bavasi, and the other one that was in there. I can't remember right now, but they're all very fond memories for me too, being a part of that. And you had your distinguished career. I mean, how did you eventually take what you learned and absorbed from the Angels? What made you want to go and be a part of the Hall of Fame at that point?
Well, Ron, I'll tell you, my goal, because I grew up loving the Dodgers and the Angels, but I lived in San Bernardino, and it was a little bit easier to get to the Angel games through the years. And I heard Dick Enberg on a transistor radio after we moved out here from Virginia, and I was hooked. And an Angel Red Sox game in, I think it was August of '69. Then I heard Vin and Jerry calling a Dodger game. But really, for me, I wanted to be an Angel for 50 years. I mean, I'd kind of finished I was in my 40th year, and I had one conversation with Jeff Idelson, my predecessor at the Hall, in spring training of 19. And he asked me, he kind of gave me a heads up that he was going to be stepping aside, and asked me if I'd be interested. And I just said, the Angels are everything to me. I had the best job in the world, and I really did feel that way. That's not just hyperbole. So I kind of passed on it, if you will. And I had a discussion, thought about it for a couple of days, and got back to Jeff. And then a couple of days after that, and this is still spring training, we're just in the process of coming back to Anaheim. Jane Forbes Clark called me, and the chairman of the board of the Hall of Fame, and said that she understood it was kind of a tough decision for me not to be interested, but could we have a conversation? So, I believe in chain of command and all that. So I flew out to Florida to meet with her, and we had 2.5 hour lunch, Ron, and I never finished my salad. And the Reader's Digest says I drove back to Fort Lauderdale to fly home and called her to check in. I flew out to Florida thinking I'm going to have a conversation with this lady just to see if she thought I was worthy to go through the interview process for the job. And she offered me the job while I was at the airport. Took me another 4 days to decide to accept that role. And it was arguably one of the hardest decisions I ever made, just to step aside and go to Cooperstown. But Cooperstown is Mecca. I didn't leave the Angels organization because you have a title as president. I left the Angels to go work at the Hall of Fame. And to me, it was just after 40 years to go to Cooperstown. For me, it was kind of like going back to school, if you will, to learn even more of the depth of the history of the game and the insights, and see it from a different perspective. And I'm thankful I did. It was 2 fast years, 2 amazing years, but a blessing and an opportunity from above I'll cherish for the rest of my life.
Well, you the person I left out in the last segment that we spoke about, the people that you ran into at the Dodgers, with Red Patterson, and I had great memories of Red Patterson. And you also mentioned Jeff. Jeff was on our show here about a year ago. I had a nice conversation with him, but yeah, I understand that would be a difficult position to take and ponder over. You spent a great deal of time with the Angels. And when we come back, I want to ask you a little bit about if it was ever competitive, since you learned a little bit of that from the Dodgers, and now you're stepping over to the Angels. And we'll talk a little bit more when we come back. We'll see about that right after this. Stay with us.
Oh yeah, I go through it with a fine tooth comb. All right, here we go for number two. This is going to be number two. This is segment 3, but number 2 in order. This is going to be 12 minutes, gentlemen. Stand by.
Hello, Ron Save. Okay, we're back. We'll see about that with our special guest, Tim Mead. And Tim, I just ran across this in my mind as I was thinking about where I would start. The very first Major League Baseball game I ever saw was in 1968 at Anaheim Stadium between the California Angels and the Oakland A's. And I got to see Rick Monday and Reggie Jackson, and I got to see Jim Fregosi. And that was my first big league game that I got to see. And so I do have a connection, but there with Anaheim. But one of the things when I was coming through the Dodger organization and I eventually got to the big leagues as a Dodger, I always felt that it was Dodgers Angels, unfortunately. I felt like, it was the Dodgers and then there were the Angels, a little bit like the Lakers and then there were the Clippers. Mm-hmm. And I always felt that was kind of unfair. And then, of course, there was a big breakthrough under Mike Scioscia when you won the World Championship back in 2002. Did you ever feel like you were competing against the Dodgers, or were you just trying to run your ship and get it in the best position it could possibly be?
Ron, that's a great question, and I would tell you when I first started, and I was kind of just learning, started at 22. I think there was a little bit of, maybe more than a little bit of feeling like the stepchild. Right. Within the region a little bit, media coverage, if you will, right. The success that you had in the 70s, winning the championship again in 81 and all that. I think that we had to work a little bit harder for attention, but we didn't have the success to match the attention that we were looking for. Mr. Autry made the moves with free agency with Bobby Grich and Joe Rudi and Donnie Baylor and 77, and that changed. Then we had the great year in 82. But it's almost really, I came to the realization in my own mind, you look at the Yankees now with 27 world championships, and the Mets had 69, which will forever be, a great conversation. But until you can match somebody, and particularly the first person in the area or first organization, it's going to be difficult. I think the Angels let that go probably from my mindset in the 90s. Did we compete? I don't know that it's so much that we competed out of jealousy or maybe there was a little envy, but I think it was just trying to be relevant in the media world. And as you know, making that drive to the freeway from the TV stations to get those live shots that we used to do in the day, that was huge. But to get, Jim or Stu or Eddie Arnold or anybody to come down used to be difficult. Yeah. For me in PR, again, as I mentioned earlier, the relationship with Fred Claire, but also the relationship with Steve and Toby was fantastic. So I think that as a professional, we looked at it very much as respect for each other, but we knew where the attention was going. You asked about Mike Scioscia. A lot of times that I think that, for the Dodger organization, the O'Malley family changed and set the tone for that organization. And I think there was a standard and an expectation of all of you as players, certainly, but the front office and the consistency. I watched, Ron, Mike Scioscia change the course of the Angels organization. And I'll tell you how it was very simple to me. It wasn't just in the clubhouse, it was in the front office. 1999, we had a bad year, and it cost a lot of people their jobs. And Mike was hired in November of 99. Well, we used to have to write in the day a prospectus in advance to, PR propaganda about what we thought the next year would be. And in that, my prospectus, I wrote, whoever we'd acquired, trades, hope that we would be competitive in 2000. We had expectations. And Mike was in my office and he read it and he goes, look, I wasn't around in 99. We're going to move forward. I wasn't part of that. but the one word that I choose and prefer not to use is competitive. I like to use the word contending. And he said, competitive is hope. If everything gets together, maybe we can do this. Contending is making a definitive statement of our expectations. So Mike drilled that message into the Garrett Andersons and the Tim Salmons and Troy Percival's downstairs, but it also resonated with all of us upstairs. And that changed the course of the organization. And, he takes over in 99 in the off season, and 3 years later, 3 seasons later, we're world champions. So that is a credit to Mike Scioscia, for which I'll always be grateful.
Michael and I played a little bit together at the end of my career, a few years together, played against each other after that. There's something about catchers and managers that go hand in hand pretty well with Major League Baseball, but I was hired back in the late 90s, and Mike was still a part of the organization. I think I went and visited him in Albuquerque when he was still managing there. Mm-hmm. For a brief period, but the Dodgers let him get away, and they went in a different route, and you guys got a gem. And I am not surprised that Michael was able to make his way, and you guys waited a long time to bring a world championship to Anaheim. That must have changed pretty much everything going your way now in Anaheim.
Well, it really did, Ron. It was 42 years to get to that point. In 42 years with a lot of effort. I think the only, for all the emotion that year brought, I think the only disappointment was that Mr. Autry wasn't around to see it happen. But really what winning did is it took you were around enough to know that, to hear everybody discuss or read about the curse. Everything was the curse with the Angels. You go back to 82, 86, what happened in postseason, some of the injuries. 97 and 98, we had great seasons and then just threw it away in September. I was the assistant GM when we had 2 9-game losing streaks in the last 50-plus games in 95 and lost by a game. But what it really did was it put us in the history books. We had that world championship. And I think the credibility within the community, within the baseball community, certainly was really what you strive for. And even after Disney sold us in May of 2003, and Artie and his team came in, had a lot of success, obviously, through 2009. And I think that's the thing that's been the toughest through the current stretch right now is it took so long to get up to that point of consistent relevancy, and you don't want to lose that. And that doesn't mean you have to win world championships year in and year out. But when you're considering an upper division organization and, with all those preseason magazines projecting you to be in the hunt, that's an important place to be. And that was probably, Ron, as satisfying as anything to get to that mountaintop and sustain it for a while. And that was Mike. And if you look at what he did, not only Scioscia's guidance, but his selection of people with Bill Stoneman to have gone and gotten Buddy Black and had Joe Madden on that staff, and then Ron Renicky, and obviously we had, Mickey as our hitting coach. But he brought in good people and who've gone on and had great success. Dino Ebel, obviously a fixture with the Dodgers now at third base, and I think the Angels miss him each and every day. So it's hard to get there. It's harder to stay there, the same as it is getting to the major leagues and sustaining a 10-year career.
Sam, I want to ask you, you mentioned Mr. Autry. What was he like as a person? Because I think a lot of our younger listeners don't realize, how important he was to Southern California and baseball in general, and a tremendous tycoon, businessman, but also the singing cowboy. What was he like as a man and as an owner?
Mike, he was the most unassuming celebrity star that I ever met. And I would say this, and I'm not just saying it because of the Dodger connection here, but there's 3 people I use Mr. to. It's Mr. O'Malley Sr., who I never had met, Walter O'Malley, but Peter O'Malley, I say Mr. and I say Mr. Autry, and I think that is the ultimate respect that can be paid to those gentlemen. He didn't travel with an entourage. He would come down the hall to go to every day during a homestand to go down and see Buzzy or Mike Porter, general manager, and he would stop in your office and say hello. And I had the one-off conversations when there were certain things going with PR. I think Ron knows how this works down in the clubhouses. I never heard Mr. Autry raise his voice, and about the only time I think that I ever had a sense that he was frustrated. And two quick stories. His birthday is in September, and we had a homestand after a particularly bad year. I'm going to say it was 83 or 87. Players had a birthday cake brought into him. They sing happy birthday. Everybody gathers around in the clubhouse before the game. And somebody said, speech. And Mr. Autry said, well, fellas, a lot of you haven't had particularly good years, and many of you won't be back next year, but I really want to thank you and wish you and your families a happy off season. That was about as angry as I heard him. Conversely, in 86, where everybody, in the media in particular, wanted to see Mr. Autry get to that first World Series because he was so popular. But we have the 3-1 lead. We're one strike away from going. In Game 5, we lose that against the Red Sox and then get blown out in 6 and 7. We're about to take that long flight back from the Copley Marriott back to California and come downstairs to get ready to leave the hotel. Mr. Autry is down in the lobby by the elevators, greeting players and staff alike and telling everybody to keep your heads up. Thanks for all your hard work. We'll get them next year. And I remember that as frustrated and hurtful and hard as it was to go through that, if the owner who spent his life and all his resources wanting to win and get to a World Series can treat us like that, then pick your head up and be positive. And again, that's one of those lessons you carry with you the rest of your life.
Well, I have nothing but the ultimate respect for Gene Autry. I ran into him a number of times. I thought he was a great owner and a great guy, and I say the same about the O'Malley family, too. We're going to be right back with Tim Mead right after this.
Very nicely done, gentlemen. Very nicely done. Great story. Those are great Gene Autry stories. He also got.
He's a special man.
We used to do, more in the off season because we had guys, actually living here, in the off season, so you could do promotions and things. And I don't know how many times Lasorda had me, running around with Gene Autry, at different places, and it was always a kick. It was always a kick.
Well, he
was great.
That great line.
Always wore his cowboy hat.
Yeah, and he had that great line too about buy land, God's not making any more of it, and he did very, very well with that.
Yeah, he did.
All right, gentlemen, here we go for this is going to be segment 4. This is going to be 13 minutes. 13 minutes. Last one with the guests. We got a quick feature at the top. Stand by. And we are back. We'll see about that with the legend, champion, and MVP Ron Cey. I am Mike Airy, and this week in Dodger history, 1982. I was only a wee lad when that year. The Dodgers defeated the Houston Astros 4-1 in the Astrodome. The Dodgers were led by Ron Cey, who had a perfect day at the plate. The Penguin was 3 for 3 with 2 doubles, 2 walks, 1 run scored, and 1 RBI. That all happened against former Dodger great Don Sutton, who's in the Baseball Hall of Fame.
Yes, sir, and I remember that well because our families were close, and Fran actually went on that trip. So Don and Patty and Fran and Ron went out to dinner, and I got the best of that night. He paid for the dinner too. I think that was a lot of fun. Tim, the game today is a lot different than the game that I played in, that you worked in. We're going to play a little bit of a word association name game thing. I'm going to give you some names. I'm going to give you some of the rule implications, how you feel about today's game today. So let's start out with, let's go to Bobby Grich.
Bobby Grich is one of the greatest defensive second baseman of all time who could go to right field, hit the opposite way with power. I think he tied for the American League lead in home runs in '81. Was one of the smartest base runners, not the fastest, but one of the smartest base runners. And I would say this, and I joke with Bobby about it to this day, could arrive late at the clubhouse, be on the field in time, and be in game mode as quickly as anybody I ever met. And I still think that he should be on the peripheral for the Veterans Committee for Hall of Fame consideration.
I agree with you 100%. I grew up with Bobby Grich. I think I played my very first All-Star game. Bobby Grich was the starting second baseman in '74 in Pittsburgh, I believe. Ultimate respect. I agree. I wonder how he got so lost in the shuffle.
Yep.
Let's go to Mike Trout.
Those first 10 years, the first part of his career just went by too fast for all of us to really, the perspective of what he accomplished. I really literally pray every day that, the health stays there. I think Mike Trout baseball needs a healthy Mike Trout. He is one of the most selfless individuals. What he does very, very quietly. He enjoys the game. He loves the game, doesn't enjoy it. He's a phenomenal teammate. He plays with pure joy. And really, Ron, he's one of the most loyal people I've ever met in or out of the game of baseball. He's just a phenomenal talent, and I wish him nothing but good health the next 5+ years.
Well, I think baseball needs him. I think Angels need him, and I do agree with you about his loyalty. For him to be able to stay through the thick and thin of that is quite a testament.
Yes, sir.
You guys had Trout, Pujols, and Ohtani all at the same time, and what that could have been if they were all, in that, if Mike didn't have the injuries, if Albert wasn't, in the declining years of his career, and you bring in Ohtani, who's just, touching the periphery of his excellence in baseball. Let's go to Albert Pujols.
A perfectionist each and every day. I had the honor of watching him take batting practice in the cage underneath, and it is absolutely amazing the respect that even teammates had. You could have certain music playing and kind of joking and talking back and forth. When Albert was in the cage, it was quiet. There was no goofing around. Albert, his attention to detail was absolutely phenomenal. His desire to win was amazing. I stood in the cage in spring training one year, Ron, and Dino Ebel was throwing BP. Just regular BP, and Albert stepped out of the box on a pitch that came in, and he saw a blem. He saw the red dot on this ball as it was coming and stepped out. And I know how good his eyesight was, but that was absolutely phenomenal. And he said what was wrong and why he stepped out before he picked up the ball. It was absolutely amazing. His workouts. I mean, I had the. And I mean, this was a privilege, a distinct privilege of watching Trouty, Shohei, and Albert's post-game workouts, along with, in some cases, the pre-game workouts of Shohei and Mike. Absolutely amazing. There's just nothing like him. And Albert was first ballot. I think people's expectations. I think Albert helped Mike stay in Anaheim, if you will, with the because Albert struggled when he first got it, left St. Louis, and obviously it was a storybook ending and going back and then finishing, going with the Dodgers as well. Albert is a first ballot Hall of Fame, and I don't think gets enough credit because of leaving St. Louis. Just how dynamic and powerful his first 10, 11 years were.
Yeah, very similar careers, the first 10 with Mike and Albert. 700 home runs tells you a lot, along with 2,000 RBIs. Let's go to a young Shohei Ohtani.
I set I sat in a meeting with Nez Balello, Billy Epler, John Carpino, when after we'd had the press conference with Shohei, when he sat in there and said all the things that he was going to do in the major leagues. He knew it. He was dedicated to it and devoted to it. And even though he had the injury the first year, spring training, there's some people that thought he might start in AAA because he was rolling over on the 4.3s in spring training, not driving the ball. His workout, his determination, it is baseball. Some people talk about, just being diehard and totally focused. I've never met an athlete. I don't know that I've ever met an individual is as focused to his or her craft as Shohei Ohtani. And something tells me there's still the best is yet to come.
It's pretty hard not to agree with that.
The two-time MVP and 50-50.
Yeah, and he's already got 27 home runs at this point, so leading the National League in home runs. It's wide open.
What about Jim Abbott, Tim?
Well, Mike, you bring up a great question. I'm going to throw one plug. Jimmy's going to do an E60 documentaries coming out in the middle of July. I strongly recommend that everybody watch it. He's one of the ultimate great ambassadors for the game and should be part of Major League Baseball. Jimmy Abbott, unassumingly, without calling attention to himself, to me, opened the doors for physically challenged athletes or young competitors in sports across the country, across the globe, in the spectrum of sports, to not be afraid to do it and try it. I think his calling was for that as much as it was to play Major League Baseball. And one of the hardest days, he and I were very close and went through a lot of things, with his time with us. The day that we traded him to the Yankees was one of the toughest days of my professional career. But one of the happiest days of my career is when he threw that no-hitter as a member of the Yankees. And he is still revered on Old Timers Day as if he's one of the great legends of the New York Yankees. But Jim Abbott is the same person today as he was when we had the press conference after he was drafted in '88. And Jim Abbott is one of to me, the great emotional and human interest stories in the history of our game, if not sports.
Well, he's a great story, and he's even a greater baseball story. So I encourage all of you who do not know that story to watch that documentary that you mentioned. Yeah, it's a great thing. A tremendous asset to baseball. Let's switch over to the game changing. All the manipulation that's being done, the new rules, the robot umpires. How do you feel about the pitch clock?
Well, Ron, I'm not sure how many 15 or 16 inning games you played in your career, but if I go back and look at the hours that we may have had with our families at home for some of those long games, I like that change. I'm not 100% sold on the robotic umpiring. When you talk about looking at Mr. Autry or Mr. O'Malley or Jim Abbott and try to have people understand who they were and their role in the history of the game, try to explain to a 16-year-old the history of Earl Weaver or Billy Martin when you watch a video and try to understand what was wrong with this manager, because you don't see those outbursts anymore, or rarely in the game today. And I think a lot of the changes have precluded the personality of managers in their role in the game. The one I'm not sold on, I'm not sold on the ghost runner.
I'm not either.
I just think that when you play that game in October, if you have clubs, and I know Soch with the runner on second. You're gonna hit that ground ball, or we're gonna have the bunt in the 10th inning. It's just the way Mike would have had things executed, same way Gene Mauch did as a manager. But if you see an 11 or 12 inning game in the major leagues today, from my opinion, I'll show you a team that's not as solid fundamentally. I just think if you're going to go play in that tournament in October, you've got to be able to advance a runner, and suddenly you're not going to have that. You're not going to play that way in postseason. So, you know, do what you're going to do all throughout the course of the game. And I just think that managers have to manage differently when you had you know, the bullpens that could be used longer. It's just, I don't know. I'm just not a fan of it.
Neither am I. And, you know, on the average, there's, I believe they play about 16 extra inning games a year on average, every club. And when you have the number of available teams available for postseason play, that's a lot of games to send people home early because the game's running too long. They're important games. They all count the same. Tim, we left a lot on the table. I want to talk to you again. I want to put more of this down. Thank you so much for joining us. You had a fabulous career, continued success, and good luck to you.
Ron and Mike, thank you both. It's been my pleasure to be part of this today. Wishing you both the best.
Thanks so much. That was Tim Mead, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll be back. We'll see about that right after this message.